Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, play the Opinion Potomac Watch podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. Also on Thursday, the Senate in Democratic control voted 52 to 46 for a Congressional Review Act resolution that would overturn President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan. Let's start with a piece of that debate from the Senate floor. Here is Democratic Senator Bob Menendez.
When the history books are written about this moment in time, do you want to stand on the side of the 43 million Americans who have played by the rules and stand to benefit from long overdue student loan forgiveness? Or do you want to stand on the side of those who punish hardworking Americans for trying to get ahead? That, to me, is the stark moral decision that is before this chamber.
And here's Republican Senator John Thune.
The President's student loan giveaway isn't a government handout for the needy. It's a government handout that will be disproportionately beneficial to Americans who are better off. It's ironic coming from someone who claims he wants to build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. The President's student loan giveaway is decidedly more top down. Let's face it.
Alicia, since President Biden will probably veto this resolution, can you give a sense of what the significance of it is politically from your perspective?
Well, I think it shows that there was never a majority support in Congress for the student loan forgiveness. You had Democrats in the Senate and actually a couple in the House join Republicans in voting to repeal it. So there's no way he would have ever gotten this through Congress if he had tried. If recall that Biden himself had suggested that, it was pretty questionable whether he had the authority to cancel student debt on his own. And Nancy Pelosi, back in 2021, said he didn't, that he would need an act of Congress. And here ironically, the Democrats or Pelosi voted in this case on the House resolution last week to say, oh, no, it's kosher. So first of all, it basically reiterates that he didn't have the support of Congress to do what he did. And then second of all, it kind of put the Democrats, some of the moderates like John Tester, Manchin on record. I mean, they got to show that they were repudiating his student loan forgiveness. But some of the others that present themselves as moderates and defenders of the working class, like Bob Casey from Pennsylvania, it also put them on record as supporting this massive wealth transfer to mostly affluent, college-educated Americans. And then, of course, it will be invariably paid for by working class or people who didn't go to college or worked and sacrificed to repay their loans.
Also voting for this resolution, Arizona's now independent former Democratic Senator Kyrsten Sinema. And Kim, I think Alicia makes a good point here on the politics of this. Obviously, Republicans would love to be able to pass a resolution that would get the president's signature and would block his student loan forgiveness plan. In fact, some of the Republicans who voted against Kevin McCarthy's debt limit deal cited that as one reason that it did not block student loan forgiveness. But that is never going to get the president's signature. But on the other hand, there is utility sometimes politically into taking these votes, even if they're going to be vetoed, because then you can campaign on that issue in 2024. And I would not be surprised at all to see some campaign ads in some of these states that have Senate races next year talking about Senator so-and-so voted in favor of keeping President Biden's student loan jubilee.
Yes, and it's not just the student loan issue. The way that Republicans have been able to do this is via what's known as a Congressional Review Act. And what that allows you to do is after an administration has put into an effect a rule, there's a certain timeline, a certain number of calendar days in which Congress can, with a simple majority vote, overturn that. Now, as noted, the president has the ability to veto that. So these are kind of better done, for instance, when you've got a turnover in the White House from one administration to another, the hangover from the prior administration's rules, maybe they go through Congress, they get overturned, and then the president allows them to stand and signs them. You can get regulations off the book a lot more quickly that way. It's a little harder when you have divided Congress. But they've done this now. I think this is going to be the fourth time that the president will have to had vetoed one of these CRAs. They also did one on the Labor Department's rule on ESG investing. They did one overturning the president's Waters of the United States rule, which gets into wetlands and federal authority over waterways. They recently did one thwarting the president's move on solar tariffs. Now, again, he has vetoed these. But what it does is it sends this huge message, that the president's agenda is not supported by a majority of Congress, okay? And as Alicia said, it also tees up Democrats on some really thorny issues, ones where they have close their mouths, even though they may know that it's not good politically. And I think this particular one really does resonate because there's the fairness issue, which you heard Thune talking about. I mean, the Menendez comments are really quite ridiculous, suggesting that you are voting against hardworking Americans. Actually, you're voting for fairness because there's a plenty of hardworking Americans that aren't going to get their debt forgiven, who are out there with a job and who didn't have the luxury of going to a fancy university and racking up all that debt. So there's a fairness question. I think there's a question that most Americans also feel simply about the responsibility of having to pay back debt that you have taken on. But also, this is just a good question in terms of lawlessness. I mean, the president really had no authority to do this. We're likely to get a Supreme Court resolution on that soon. I find it very likely that he's going to be struck down in that movement. And then the administration will be stuck as well, given that this latest law that was signed this week on the debt ceiling is also going to force them to begin requiring student loan recipients to begin repaying those loans on a monthly basis in a fairly short order.
The other advantage of Congressional Review Act resolutions is that they are privileged in the Senate and they cannot be filibustered. So that helps explain the dynamic, what is going on here, because it only takes 51 senators to send this to President Biden's desk for the veto, not the usual 60 when you have to overcome that filibuster. And so to the point about the numbers here, Alicia, you could also see this in a presidential race, some sort of campaign ad saying President Biden's administrative state, his regulatory agencies are so out of control that even Democrats have voted 4 times in the Senate to overturn them. And Alicia, we give you the last word here.
Well, I would be surprised if by come next year, we don't see many more instances of the Senate and the House voting to overturn rules. There are many more coming down the pike. We continue to get press releases from Joe Manchin complaining about rules and overreaches. I think he just put out a letter from 40 some odd bipartisan senators complaining about a new energy efficiency rule for electric grid transformers that would essentially upend the entire market and could lead to power outages in itself. But the administration is intent on, driving its climate and social agenda. I mean, we've seen with various EPA rulemakings, and a lot of these, again, have a lot of bipartisan opposition. If the administration goes through with its replacement clean power plan that seeks to regulate the coal and natural gas plants across the country and essentially force them out of business by requiring them to adopt hydrogen and carbon capture technologies that don't really exist, I think you're going to see another CRA on that. And so I think they're going to continue to come, and it'll be interesting to see how Biden tries to defend his record come next year, assuming he does not drop out of the race.
Thank you, Alicia and Kim. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Potomac Watch.